There are many different factors that come into play when you are creating sound. Obviously, you have to have some idea in mind as to what kind of tone you are chasing. I like to put sounds into one of 4 different categories. Firstly, clean tones. These are beautiful sounds that are created without the use of distortion. They can vary from nice lush chorusy ballads to jazz or mellow pop music. Then there are crunch tones. These are warm, overdriven tones that have a certain tube-like saturation without being overly distorted. These are great for rock, blues, or even country music. We also have distorted tones. These are powerful tones that vary from rock-type distortion to full-blown heavy metal. Finally, special effects tones. These can vary greatly from synth keyboard-type sounds to other instrument simulations like bass guitar, violin, or sitar. We will look more closely at how to achieve some of these types of sounds as we move on. But now, let's look at how to start shaping your tone. Different guitars have different types of pickups and usually fall into 2 categories: single coil, such as those traditionally seen in a Stratocaster type guitar, or humbucker, which often look like 2 single coils joined together. There are many manufacturers of pickups and literally thousands of different models that will all have their different tonal characteristics as well as different output levels. This guitar here has what are known as active pickups. They are very high output and utilise a 9-volt battery to power them. Most traditional type pickups don't use batteries and are therefore considered to be passive. Because all pickups have a different output level, you can tailor the level that is input into the GT8 by pressing System and then the right parameter button until you come to Input Level. Use the value wheel to dial in the right level. It's important to get a good level without causing clipping or unwanted distortion. Refer to the section on levels for a more in-depth look at getting the correct levels. As I said earlier, all guitars have their own distinctive tonal characteristics. The system presence control is similar to the presence on a guitar amplifier, but in this case affects the signal before it goes into the GT8, and it's global, which means that it will affect every patch in the GT8. You can use this setting to alter the brightness of a guitar that can be handy if you use 2 or more different guitars with the GT8. Most of you will have heard the term preamp. All amplifiers have a preamp stage, and it is the preamp that is responsible for shaping the actual tone, that is then output by the power amp stage to your speakers. The GT8 has a preamp that can simulate the tonal characteristics of 46 different well-known amplifier preamp stages, as well as let you create your own custom preamps. Let's have a look at the different preamp settings. The awesome thing about the GT8 is the incredibly flexible routing possibilities of the preamp section. There are 4 different channel modes. Single. This mode acts in the same way as a regular 2-channel amplifier. You can select 2 totally different preamps in this mode, but only one is actively output at any given time. You can assign the channels to a control pedal so that you can conveniently switch between the 2. Dual mono. This mode works similarly to the single mode, except both channels can be heard simultaneously. This can make for some huge sounding tones. Imagine running your guitar through a rectifier and a Marshall amplifier at the same time. Dual left and right. This one results in channel A being heard in the left speaker and channel B being heard in the right speaker simultaneously. This is great for really fat stereo tones, or even having a clean preamp on one side and a distorted preamp on the other, as if there were 2 guitarists playing. Dynamic. Now this is very cool. Imagine having the preamp channel change based on how hard or soft you pick the strings, or even just by rolling the volume knob down on your guitar a little. We'll look at different ways of using the dynamic functions of the GT8 a little later in this DVD. This parameter is handy if you are using 2 totally different preamps in dual left and right mode, and you want to give the impression of a second guitarist. Let's face it, 2 guitarists playing the exact same riff are never going to be 100% in sync with each other, so this setting can delay the signal up to 50 milliseconds to give the effect of that second, slightly out of sync player. It is perfect for really fattening up your sound. I prefer to set this to around 15 to 20 milliseconds. This parameter will only take effect when using the dynamic channel mode. It allows you to set the sensitivity of when the channel changes. The best way to effectively set this up is to firstly set it to 100. For this example, I have used the bright clean preamp on channel A and drive stack on channel B. Now, roll your guitar's volume down to the point where you want your change to occur. Then, gradually turn the dynamic sense setting down using the value wheel until you start to hear only channel A. Ideally, you need to be able to play comfortably without triggering channel B until you roll the volume back to its full position. You can use dynamics to trigger different effect parameters also. We'll talk about this in the control assignment section. The gain setting controls how much warmth, punch or distortion your preamp's tone has. In clean sounds, it can add warmth and more detail to your sound, although high settings may cause your sound to break up or distort, so keep an ear out for that. In crunch and other heavy tones, it will give your sound more punch and drive. The bass, mid, treble and presence parameters allow you to tailor your tone like you would on a conventional amplifier. You should set these controls to suit your taste, and everyone's taste will vary. Some amplifiers like the Roland JC120 have a bright button. This adds extra crispness, or as the name suggests, brightness to your sound. This parameter will only appear in the preamp simulations that actively use it. There are 3 gain switch settings available: low, middle and high. This directly affects the intensity of the perceived gain and is relative to the gain knob setting. It is recommended that this be set to middle for best results. Too much gain can cause your sound to unnaturally break up and distort. Another great addition to the GT8 is the solo switch button. When engaged, this switch boosts your sound and applies a change in the EQ that is conducive to soloing. Adjusting the solo level parameter defines how much of a volume boost is applied when the button is turned on. This setting can also be applied to the control pedal or expression pedal. There are a variety of settings in the GT8 that simulate different amplifier speakers as well as microphones. The speaker settings vary from a single 8-inch speaker to a double stack of 4x12 cabinets, which are also known as quad boxes. The microphone simulations are based on industry standard studio microphones, and whilst Roland haven't actually listed the models that they have based them on, here are the models that I presume them to be. As we progress through this DVD, we'll explore some of the different speaker and microphone settings. So, what is a patch anyway? Well, a patch is a sound that is made up of various different tonal elements. The GT8 has 10 different modules. They are the preamp, overdrive distortion, delay, chorus, reverb, compressor, EQ, wah, FX1 and FX2. Individual sounds from any of these modules combined go to making up a patch. Add to this the noise suppressor and external effects loop, and this gives you 12 elements to consider when creating a patch. Okay, so let's create a patch from scratch. We'll create a distorted solo patch that has an overdrive, EQ, delay and reverb. Firstly, turn off each of the modules by double pressing any of the module buttons that are currently lit. Now, we'll start by getting our dry preamp tone. Press the preamp button twice to turn the preamp on, and then use the right parameter button to step through each of the settings. This is where your ear comes in. You need to adjust each setting until you think it sounds right. There are no right or wrong settings, it's all up to your own personal taste. We will use the dual left and right preamp mode for this tone. This will allow us to use 2 totally independent preamps simultaneously. Now the first setting is the channel delay time. This allows you to delay the signal of the second preamp to give the impression of a second guitarist playing in unison. This is an awesome feature for fattening up your sound. You can set this anything up to 50 milliseconds, but I like a setting of around 20 milliseconds. Just bear in mind that this setting is only for when you are running the GT8 in stereo. It does not sound good in mono because it causes phasing. For mono applications, use the dual mono mode. Press the right parameter button and select your channel A preamp. In this example, I'll be using the Rectifier Modern 1 preamp sim, but of course you can select any sim that you like depending on what tone you're chasing. From this point you can start making settings to your channel B preamp. Channel A is the amp that you'll hear in your left speaker and channel B will be heard in your right speaker. You can toggle between the channels by pressing the respective channel button. So having done this, I'll select the Rectifier Modern 2 amp for channel B. Now move on to our gain. I always try to set the gain fairly conservatively. Too much gain can seriously mess up your definition of your sound. Next, set your bass, mids, treble and presence. These settings are like the controls on a conventional amp and should be set to suit your own personal taste. Don't forget to toggle to the other channel and make the settings for it as well. You will then come to the level setting. Listen carefully to ensure that both channels are around the same level to keep the sound balanced. Again, keep your setting conservative so as not to cause any unwanted distortion. This is also known as clipping. Moving right will bring you to the gain switch. It is recommended that this always be set to middle for best results. As I mentioned earlier, a great new feature of the GT8 is the solo switch, and as the name suggests, it will be turned on when you are playing a solo. This function boosts your sound and will fatten it up somewhat and works really well. It can be assigned to the control pedal or expression pedal so that you can kick it in when you are ready to solo. The next parameter governs how loud you want your sound to be boosted when you turn the solo button on. I usually find that a boost of between 50 and 55 is ideal depending on the type of sound. Pressing the right parameter button will now bring us to the speaker settings. Original is a setting that is recommended for the particular preamp that you have chosen. For example, a JC120 amplifier uses two 12-inch speakers, so selecting original will give you a 2x12 cabinet. But there are no rules here. Experiment and choose the setting that you prefer. For our patch here, I'll be using the 8x12 speakers, as would be used in a double stack. As mentioned before, there are 4 different microphone simulations that you can choose, and again, it is up to you what you prefer. You may use the same type of mic for each channel, or 2 different mics, or you can just simply turn the mics off. If you are using a mic, you can set how far away from the speaker it is set, from the center of the cone to 10 centimeters away. And finally, set the mic level to 100 and the direct level to 0. This will give 100% simulation. From here, you can use the EQ if you want to shape your overall preamp slightly. If placed after the preamp in the effects chain, it will affect both channels equally. Refer to the chapter about EQ to help you with using it. When you are happy with the preamp sound, move on to the overdrive. For a solo patch, we want our sound to cut through or stand out from the rest of the band instruments, so I like to use an overdrive to act as a boost to give our tone a little more dynamics. Here, we'll use the Tube Screamer simulation and I will set the drive fairly low and the level to 50. Set the bass and treble to your personal taste. If you toggle the effect on and off, you'll hear the difference that the overdrive has made. Now let's move on to the delay and reverb. These effects help to give your tone a little more depth. Set right, they can really help your sound sing, although if you overdo it, they can also easily suffocate your sound and make it sound washed out. Here are my personal settings and they are merely recommendations. Again, tweak them to suit your own personal taste. Once you are happy with your patch, don't forget to name it and save it. Obviously, tone is affected by many more elements than just the GT8. It starts with the type of guitar that you play, its pickups, whether they are single coil or humbuckers, the material that the guitar is constructed from, even the gauge strings that are on the guitar. Then you have the thousands of different amplifiers and speakers, and also environmental factors such as whether you're playing in a room with carpet or tiles to a stadium. So, with all this in mind, you'll find that a patch created and played through one setup may sound totally different in another, and similarly, one person's idea of great tone can also differ to the next person.